What common sense is actually wrong? If you're passionate about what you do, you won't work a day in your life wrong. It's still really hard work even though you enjoy it. And to make matters worse, you might work so hard to the point where you end up hating the thing you loved. Don't trust someone who won't look you in the eyes. Having social anxiety doesn't make you a bad person, and sociopaths have no problem staring you down. Probably not the answer you're looking for. But the notion that darker roasts of coffee are higher in caffeine content. They are not. The caffeine gets cooked out the longer you roast the coffee bean. The lighter the roast, the higher the caffeine content. You don't need to wait 30 minutes before going swimming after eating. This was just invented by public pools to stop people bringing food into the water. Put ice on a burn. Do not do this, it can rip the skin. Do put the burn under cool water immediately. Distance makes the heart grow fonder. Psychologists actually showed that it's the reverse. Which is why LDR are very hard. Out of sight, out of mind is more accurate. When I worked in spectator event safety, we learned, sports stadia, that when an evacuation is happening, the safest place to go to is the playing field, as it is usually open air and therefore low risk if it is a fire evacuation. However, common sense takes over crowd dynamics and people try leaving the way they came in, from the other side of the building. So this common sense trait results in thousands of people flocking into burning buildings. An example of this was the Bradford City Stadium fire. A huge chunk of the crowd headed back into the burning stadium looking for exits despite open air, the pitch being meters in front of them. When you see an emergency vehicle with sirens on behind you, you should always slow down and move to the lane or shoulder to your right. This is exactly what you should do on city roads. But on the highway, you should never brake for an emergency vehicle unless they are pulling you over or you're slowing for a stopped vehicle. Braking in front of an ambulance just slows them down and creates traffic jams. Maintain your speed and get your signal on and merge as soon as you can. And for God's sakes, stop slamming on your brakes to avoid a speeding ticket when you see a cop. Just take your lead foot off the gas and slow naturally. Driving with y'all is scary. The customer is always right. Fuck no, they aren't. If you've been stabbed or impaled by an object, for the love of God, leave it in. While that object is in your body, it's essentially plugging the leak. It could be puncturing a major vessel or organ. The second you remove it, that plug is gone, and you are going to bleed internally like crazy. Just seek medical help. A harsher punishment doesn't deter someone from committing a negative act. Common sense would tell you that if a drug dealer is aware of a law that would sentence them to life in prison for dealing drugs, that they'll be less likely to deal drugs. However, research shows that people often don't consider the negative consequences prior to breaking the law. You hold your breath if you run out of air while scuba diving. Wrong. Your lungs will explode as you'll float upwards with a lungful of air, and you probably will try to surface anyway, and the air inside them expands. The proper procedure is to scream all the way up to make sure your airways are open. Going outside with wet hair will not make you get sick. It will make you feel cold as hell though. Source: I'm Canadian. Have showered. Don't go to bed angry. Me and my husband ignoring this rule has saved our marriage. Do you know how many stupid fights are caused by being tired? You attract more flies with honey than with vinegar. Flies actually prefer vinegar over honey. Running hot water to pour grease down the sink drain. That water always cools eventually, and usually the same distance down the drain, where it solidifies, creating a blockage. Although it's best to never put grease down the drain. If you run cold water and run the garbage disposal, the grease will solidify when it hits the cold water. The disposal will chop it into tiny pieces, and it will float down the line, creating no blockage. Sometimes, when someone is having a bad day, it's better to just listen and agree rather than offer logical advice. Someone intelligent about one subject is intelligent about all subjects. People apply this all the time when it comes to plumbers. Smart about pipes. But you wouldn't listen to them on healthcare outside of lead and pipes. But put them in a suit and call them an actor. And they are clearly an expert in all subjects, especially politics and healthcare. A lot of nutrition common sense is based on nothing, and/or has never been proven. I chalk it up to the fact that the human body is more adaptable than anyone gives it credit for. And that goes for diet as well as a lot of other things. And people think they can find solutions through dietary inclusions/exclusions. Or they look toward those things as something to blame health problems on. The slower and more defensive you drive, the better. Couldn't be further from the truth. You need a mix of defensive and offensive to truly be safe. Keep traffic flowing. And to prevent bottlenecks. People get mad when they don't get a tax refund. But getting a refund means you overpaid and loaned that money to the gov tax interest-free for the year. You don't want to owe hundreds or thousands of dollars at filing. But if you owe less than $100, that's way better than getting a refund. All fires can be put out with water. Cooking. Searing the meat seals in the juice is bullshit. It doesn't seal anything ducking anywhere. If anything, the intense heat from searing does the opposite. Ever seared a steak then put it to one side, and loads of juices come out? Yeah, that's the juices quite obviously not being locked in. Searing is really for getting more flavor by browning the meat, aka the Maillard reaction if you're interested. If you want to keep moisture in, you need to use salt, specifically the techniques of curing and brining. It opens up all the little tubes that make up the flesh, and while it draws moisture out, that expansion also lets the moisture back in. Super simplistic explanation, but that's roughly what happens. You can make a lovely tender steak with zero color on it. You just need salt and heat. For example, with Heston's perfect steak recipe, he cooks his steak on low in a bag, sous vide, for 12 hours, then adds the color afterwards with a blowtorch. Now that you know this, you too can argue with stubborn uncles about meat cookery at family barbecues.